Hello and welcome back to the Daily Express's Royal Roundup. We are joined by Richard, who has been on holiday. I've been on holiday, but we are back. And of course, as always, there's lots and lots to talk about. Don't know if you kept an eye on Richard's socials, but he's been doing lots of paper exclusives, which we'll be talking about today, such as Prince Charles, Prince Andrew's reputation, and perhaps the Queen's health concerns, because there's been sort of lots of talk about this. You know, we've seen pictures of her with bruised hands, but we've also seen her very happy. So as always, if you've got any comments or questions about any of the topics that we talk about, then just pop them in the comment section and then we can bring them up accordingly. So welcome back, Richard.
Thank you. I've been in Rwanda as well. I've been working away in Rwanda as well as on holiday before that.
Oh my gosh. So here, there and everywhere. But you've made time for the Daily Express's Royal Roundup. So thank you very much. Well, I guess then we'll kick things off with the Queen. What is the latest from your side of things? Because she did get pictured with some bruised hands, but obviously you've also reported that she's very happy and healthy and well. So what's the story then?
Well, I mean, as we speak, I think Buckingham Palace has been saying that the Queen hopes to attend an event at Holyrood House, the Palace of Holyrood House, this afternoon with Prince Charles. So she's been up in Edinburgh all week, and she's done one or two things. You know, she's met Nicola Sturgeon and the presiding officer of the Scottish Parliament as well, and here we are, yes, taking part in the ceremony of the keys, sort of opener to Holyrood Week, and she looked delighted to be there, I have to say. I think Scotland holds a special place in her heart. Obviously, we all know that she spends a lot of time at Balmoral when she can. Our colleagues on the Express website spotted yesterday she got a bruised hand. Got to be honest, I was doing royal finances all day yesterday, so I didn't even get a chance to ask about it. But it looks to me as if it's the sort of thing that older people, if I can put it delicately like that, get. And there was a time when we used to react in print as well whenever there was a sign of the Queen showing a bruise or two other things. But she's 96. People are going to show signs of sort of age-related things. I mean, it's possible she can fall or something, but I just think that people do tend to get these bruisings on their hands and their legs. One of the other things that we've seen in the last few years with the Queen is that every now and again she's got a bloodshot eye, which is a burst blood vessel, which again is sort of something that happens as people get older more regularly. So, I mean, summing up her health, obviously I'm not privy to her personal medical information. We know that she is experiencing these episodic problems with mobility. I think she just sometimes wakes up, or even during the day, just has this period where she's in an extraordinary amount of pain and finding it really difficult to walk around. And then at other times she's fine. I mean, she appears to be pretty cheery most of the time and on top of her game mentally and in terms of dealing with the paperwork, etc. She has lost quite a bit of weight. Lost that last summer. I think it's just a watching brief, really. I mean, I think the people at the palace who work for her can never really be sure whether she's going to be up for doing something that day or not. But it sounds like she's having, certainly an hour or so ago, she was having a pretty good day. So they're pretty hopeful she'll be able to take part in this ceremony this afternoon. It's a nice day of pageantry in Edinburgh today. Prince Charles and Princess Anne have been to the Order of the Thistle service at St Giles Cathedral, and now we've got this ceremony where the Queen's bodyguard in Scotland, in their fancy uniforms, will be taking part in a ceremony at Holyrood House. So, I think people like. We always love it in newspapers because the colour, the pictures are so colourful where people are in bright
Yeah, of
uniforms.
course.
So yeah, I think
And
she's okay. She's doing okay.
she's doing okay. And obviously, it's quite rare now that we see the Queen without gloves on. We hardly ever see the Queen now without gloves on. And the fact that, she may have had this bruise for a while, but as you said, frail. Well, you didn't say that, but, she is, as you said, 96. She does.
Yes.
She's
Yeah.
obviously going to get that. But yeah, there'll always be speculation on the health. So I thought to kick things off.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we do know about her is that last week she was out horse riding for the first time well, she's just started, and it's really sort of experimental. She's just started horse riding again,
Wow.
and I think she and her advisors are being quite cautious about it, and they're not saying, right, this is it. She's back doing this for the foreseeable future. She just wants to see how she feels doing it. And for all I know, that bruise could be something to do with horse riding. I don't know.
And obviously that's good for
I
her
can't say
mental.
exactly how she's done it.
Yeah, and that's good for her mental and physical state, as we know that she absolutely adores horses, doesn't she? Well, I think we took this to a poll in regards to the Queen's health. I'm not sure if we have that. We may bring that up in a bit if we don't. Nope, we've got it there. Do you think the Queen should be taking more rest from public duties for her health? Yes, nearly 90%. I mean, Richard, from a royal correspondent's perspective, do you find that when she doesn't do lots of public duties, that people are saying we want to see her, and then when she does, people are saying, oh no, rest. There's no kind of good way or bad way.
You're probably right. I think the Queen enjoys a huge amount of respect from the British public and
Yeah.
around the world, really. And I think most people here probably support the idea that she should do what she feels capable of doing, and everybody understands that at her age she won't be able to do things she could do 5, 10 years ago. So she just needs to pace herself, and I think there's a fair degree of understanding about that.
And do you know the feeling within the family as well, in terms of, is that the same view they have, or do they think, oh my gosh, now is time to rest?
I think they probably feel the same. Uh, I, I, I mean, I think looking at it from a wider point of view, we're going to come on to Prince Charles's woes a little bit.
Mm, mm,
I think the longer the Queen can keep things going and appearing in public, then that's the best chance of creating a stable future and a
mm.
handover of increasingly more responsibilities. So
Indeed.
it would be astonishing if suddenly the Queen really stepped up her duties. But I think Prince Charles needs her around as well, really, for the moment, in this transitional period that we've been in for a long time now.
Yes, indeed. Okay, then. Well, we'll talk about Prince Charles later, as I know there's lots to discuss there. But it was a huge news this week over in the US. But of course, it caught international headlines, and rightly so. Ghislaine Maxwell was sentenced to 20 years. Now, of course, that has happened now. But we have seen the coverage with Prince Andrew as well. Now, we have said previously, or you've said previously on the Royal Roundup about the fact that, you think he's keen to come back into the spotlight. But of course, this has raised questions with the public once again after this sentencing. Is it right? So give me the latest on this. Is Prince Andrew still keen?
As far as I understand it, he is. But I think he suffered a bit of a setback the other week while I was away, when he was going to be attending the Order of the Garter ceremony, the procession and the service inside St George's Chapel at Windsor. And from what we understand, the Duke of Cambridge and the Prince of Wales both essentially said, particularly the Duke of Cambridge, I think, said, don't think this is a good idea. And
Mm.
it was certainly. I was away, so I haven't checked it, but it was certainly reported that the Duke of Cambridge essentially said, "It's him or me. I'm not, I'm not going to take part if he's going to be involved."
Mm.
And uh, I think that those two are really resisting his efforts to make a return. They were very unhappy, as we discussed before, about
Yeah.
him accompanying the Queen to Prince Philip's National Service of Thanksgiving, the memorial service at Westminster Abbey. But in the end, they had to bow to the Queen's wishes. In the end, it was her making the decision.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, I just can't see any way back for him. He's paid out all that money to somebody he claims he never met, and there's excuse me. There's obviously still speculation that the FBI may yet turn their guns on him, and may want to pursue their interest in interviewing him and investigate whether he has any case to answer. I mean, certainly I've spoken to people in his camp who feel that is not likely to happen. But it's very hard to predict. Very hard to predict. And it's certainly true that if he were a politician, it's just very, he wouldn't be. There would be no way back for him after this scandal.
No.
Ghislaine Maxwell has stayed silent, stayed loyal to him. Really, she's not really said a bad word about him. So that's been helpful to him. But it's difficult what may happen in the future.
Indeed. That's the thing. We don't know. But I mean, it sort of begs the question, doesn't it? Do you think that he's a little bit delusional if he thinks that he's going to come back to the same popularity as he once had?
I've spoken to people in royal circles, but let's say more than that, who really tearing their hair out with him because they say that he is delusional, about the public's reaction to him, that nobody underestimates the public's shock and revulsion at his involvement in the Epstein scandal.
Yeah.
More than Prince Andrew. And if he really understood how people feel, no matter that he's not been found guilty of any criminal offence, has not been charged with any criminal offence, he wouldn't be thinking about making any sort of comeback. It is really difficult because he's 62. He may well have another 40 years to live. He's got to do something with his life, and the question is, what could he do? I think many people would suggest that the only thing he really can do is work for a charity, but behind the scenes, in private.
He wouldn't be able to be public facing.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, it'll be interesting to see what does happen. I mean, it's been quite clear that the Queen definitely does, on a personal level, want, obviously, her son. She wants him to be part of the royal family somehow, and is happy with him being publicly pictured. So do you think the Queen would, in the ideal world, him to step back up again, do you think? Or she's aware of the public opinion?
I'd be speculating, but yes, I suspect that she would in an ideal world like it. But she's had to make some very tough decisions, as with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. There is, as I know I've said here before, and we've discussed this, there is a difference between what you do as a family member, grandmother, as a great grandmother, as a mother, what you do in those circumstances, and what you do for the good of the institution, the monarchy. And unfortunately for her, she's torn, and she's had to make some tough decisions to exclude Andrew, as she has with Harry and Meghan, because it wasn't a goer for them to be part of the firm in that sense, while doing what they've done.
Indeed. Okay, well, we took this to a poll to see what you thought about this at home. Do you think the public's opinion on Prince Andrew has changed forever? Yes, 80%, no, 20%. Now, I actually did think on this poll that it would be more leaning actually in the yes camp. So it actually quite surprised me that 20% still think, that perhaps this isn't true and that their public opinion hasn't been changed forever and there's some sort of way back.
There certainly are people, mainly people who are sort of ardent royalists, who feel that he's been treated unfairly and that he's, as I said, not been found guilty of any offence, not been accused of any criminal offence. He's just essentially, they would argue he's been placed in an impossible situation. He was sued by a woman who wanted to drag him into a court in New York, where he would never win because, intimate questions would be asked during the process, about his body and whatever, and whatever he did, whether he settled or didn't settle, he was just always going to be a massive loser out of this process. And indeed, they pointed out that most civil cases in the US are settled before they ever get to court.
Interesting. Well, definitely one to keep an eye on. I'm sure there'll be more news at some point on that. We'll probably see him pictured again, and it will divide the public. But we're going to move on now onto some actually really personally for me some news which really did hit me emotionally, and I'm sure women around the world and men around the world have also been affected by this, and it happened obviously in the USA, Roe versus Wade, and it got overturned essentially, and it's just sent shockwaves around the world. We see protests happening as well there. Anyway, it's 2022, but it's happened. Do you think with such a huge news like this, it's time that royals, working senior royals, did say something about this? It's mixing royals and politics, which has never happened.
Well, I think it's a really delicate area, and I raised this on social media early yesterday morning before we started getting briefings about royal finances, because Meghan, as you will have seen, has spoken out, and she's essentially said Harry agrees with her, and for American viewers, I think perhaps there isn't quite this understanding that politically in the UK, although we have a left-right split, we have a Democratic Socialist Labour Party and a right-of-centre Conservative Party. Actually, most people on the political spectrum in the UK, possibly apart from people with sort of deeply held religious beliefs, believe, would think that this was a really terrible thing, overturning this long-established principle in US law, and the Republicans in the US, are far to the right on most issues of our Conservative Party, so I think we've seen politicians. I think Boris Johnson spoke out against this decision. And you're right, it did send shockwaves around the world. I mean, I was at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kigali, and I was speaking to BBC, for example, pulled coverage on its main evening bulletins of the Commonwealth Summit and Charles at the Commonwealth Summit, because they were devoting, I think it was something like in the end about the first 15 minutes of their main news bulletins to this incredible decision. So I think when Meghan speaks out about this, if members of the royal family were to speak out about it, they would be speaking in the knowledge that there is pretty much a political
Mm.
consensus in the UK about it. So that makes it less difficult for them to speak out. We've seen, for example, Duchess of Cambridge effectively lobbying policymakers, including Sajid Javid, a cabinet minister, um, to give more importance to the early years of children's lives, the first 5 years, and programs that can help create a better start in life for our children in the UK.
Mm.
But it's not, as far as I can see, a party political issue. Um, where where it becomes problematic is if, for example, in Kate's case, if Labour said, we think Britain needs to spend X billion pounds a year on improving early years, and the government was saying, we can't afford that, we don't think that's a good idea at all, we can't just go on, and she was somehow seen to be backing one side or another, that would be really difficult for her. I think Meghan is treading a really fine line with the comments she's made about that way, because when she and Harry left um, effectively left the working royal family, they volunteered. They weren't even asked, as far as I understand it. They volunteered an undertaking to the Queen that they would uphold her values. Now, I don't think, I think the Queen is more careful about what she says than more junior members of her family, including the Prince of Wales. And it's just dangerous territory when you start getting involved in the constitutional crisis of a key ally. I think this is probably less troublesome than another intervention that Meghan made, because I think President Biden and his administration would agree with what she's saying. But where it was difficult was in the run-up to the US election, when Meghan spoke out in favour of a admittedly officially non-party political attempt to get more people to register for the vote, but it got wrapped up in it was effectively something that Democrats supported and Republicans were resisting. And you can argue about why the Republicans shouldn't be resisting attempts to get people to register to vote.
Mm-hmm.
But they saw it as her interfering in the electoral process, and more importantly, the then President of the United States saw it that way as well. And it was at a time when Britain was lobbying the US for a trade deal, didn't get it, but it was trying. And the palace were furious with Meghan because they felt she was undermining the efforts of the UK government in relation to President Trump at that time.
I mean, do you think that perhaps it's an indicator that she wants to take part in politics in the future? Perhaps, obviously, that would mean that they'd have to completely detach themselves from the royal family altogether if they wanted that. But perhaps this is a bit of a move for Meghan.
Well, it is interesting. I think you could make the case for saying, well, she's always seen herself as a campaigner, a human rights campaigner, a feminist, a campaign for women's issues, and she wanted to use the royal family as a platform for doing that. And in many respects, that's what Countess of Wessex does, for example. It's what Camilla does. Camilla, there's Cornwall campaigns to highlight domestic violence, along with Sophie, who's focusing particularly on the use of violence against women in warfare, sex-based violence in warfare. So I think it's a slightly dangerous area. My assessment is that that Meghan hasn't really stepped over a line here because the US president agrees with her. But if it was something that she was saying that was affecting UK-US relations, then that would be a no-no.
Well, it's obviously a divisive issue, and of course, obviously quite a personal one to Meghan too. Okay, well, we took this to a poll. Should the working royals speak out about the Roe versus Wade decision in the USA? No, 82%. Yes, 20%. So the public do obviously understand that rules and politics is separate, and I think that's the way that they want it to be. But before we end today's Royal Roundup, Richard, you did a piece on Prince Charles. Now, can you give us any details surrounding this, please?
Is this the suitcase full of cash story?
It is indeed.
Yeah, it was an astonishing story broken by the Sunday Times last weekend. Well, it really kiboshed Charles because we'd got a briefing from somebody close to him out in Rwanda, which was for Sunday newspapers, about, it was a really good story, I thought, where he's essentially saying he wants to see slavery and Britain's role in the slave trade taught in the same way that we learn about the Holocaust. And he was talking about the possibility of a national day of remembrance of the slave trade and the implications of it all, in the same way as there's a National Holocaust Memorial Day. And it got completely overshadowed by this story, which broke early Saturday evening, that Prince Charles, some government papers, slightly different issue. Sorry, it broke that he had accepted, or he had taken 3 million euros in 3 tranches of cash from the former Prime Minister of Qatar, including at a time when he was Prime Minister of Qatar. And Sheikh Hamad, the former Prime Minister, is a wealthy businessman. He's worth about £2 billion. And the money was immediately passed to Prince of Wales Charitable Fund. But it just seemed astonishing, particularly, amid concerns about money laundering or whatever, that anybody would accept this cash. And there was some fantastic detail in the story about one tranche of it being in a suitcase, and then there was also some reporting that some of it was in bags of Fortnum and Mason. Now that has actually been denied. Wow. People close to Charles have said that there's no recollection of that. So the idea that staff were still counting it out. The official version is that it was just all immediately passed to the charity who decided to accept it, and then it was audited by NatWest Coutts Bank, and the money was used for charitable purposes. But just astonishing that anybody would accept what's equivalent of £2.58 million. It was between 2011 and 2015, so it's taken a while to come out of this. And on Royal Finance Day yesterday, we had this astonishing spectacle of a senior royal source briefing that, yes, of course, this did happen, but it wouldn't happen again now. It certainly hasn't happened in the last 5 years. And, I think Prince of Wales is going to cast a shadow over his activities, I think, for a while. I think there are 5 different investigations going on to charities that are linked to him, including a Metropolitan Police investigation into allegations that one of his charities was a senior figure in one of his charities was selling honours for cash, that sold a knighthood and and British citizenship, or offered it to a Saudi businessman. And I think it's a real problem for the Prince of Wales. I know we're probably going over, but I guess the point I want to make is that up to a point, cash for access, as it's called, is what the royal family does. It's what Prince Philip did. It's what Duke and Duchess of Cambridge do.
Mm.
They gather wealthy people together who want to sort of bask in the glory of being invited to
Associated.
tournaments or receptions or dinners or whatever by them, and then they extract cash from them that is then donated to charitable causes to help people less fortunate than them. And I think everybody understands that that's part of the function of the royal family. But if it spills over into any suggestion that the money is slightly dodgy, or any suggestion that the money was taken in return for offers of something, then that's where there are problems for the royal family. And of course, they're wealthy individuals, these members of the royal family, but they're not wealthy enough to do everything they want to do with their own money. They need the support of wealthy individuals. And one of the perennial dangers for the Prince of Wales, in particular, because he's so active in the charitable sector, but all of them, is that when they go out seeking wealthy people to give money, they do run the risk every now and again that they're mixing with some potentially unsavoury characters.
And in terms of background checks and stuff like that, would that have to go through the royal household before doing, before meeting them, before accepting? I mean, how would that work?
Well, yes, there are background checks that are made, and indeed, I know a lot of charities still really value having a member of the royal family as their patron, because to them it's the gold standard. It's a sign that the royal household has checked out the charity and has decided that it is it's bona fide. It's well worth supporting. And similarly, with the people who are invited to meet members of the royal family, generally there is a bit of a background check goes on. But you go down the decades, and there are regular stories about fraudsters who've met the Queen or other people who you've got a picture of them with members of the royal family. So it's a dangerous.
And of course, this happened at the same time where Charles wanted very different headlines, I'm guessing.
Well, you would imagine so. I mean, we were also told yesterday that he'd been really emotional about meeting up with Harry and Meghan again, and with meeting his granddaughter Lilibet for the first time, and seeing Archie for the first time in a long time. And it seemed as if that was a message that senior royal sources wanted to get out. So the long and short of it was that after a day of going through financial reports and figures or whatever, most of the reporting that certainly I got in the paper, and I think most of the reporting in general, was about the suitcases full of cash, was about Harry and Meghan's meeting with their children, with Charles and Camilla, and the other major story was the bullying report. The allegations that Meghan bullied her staff has been buried, but we know that changes have been made, improvements have been made to HR policies as a result of that investigation.
Well, I mean, lots to talk about. We don't have enough time, which is really annoying. But next week, we'll go into more detail about that. We might be hearing more, as we always do, Richard, hear more as the week goes on. But thank you very much. It's been, I think it's been 2 or 3 weeks or something since we've been together on the Royal Roundup. So there'll be lots more to talk about next week. You can keep an eye on Richard's socials on Twitter, keep an eye on the Daily Express socials. You'll be able to see it all there. And of course, Richard puts out all of his paper exclusives as well on there, which we usually will be discussing in the show, so you can get your questions ready. But Richard, thank you so much for coming on today, and we'll catch up next week.
Cheers.